Basketball Manitoba podcast, we have Sara Gillis. Sara has been a cornerstone of the Basketball Manitoba community for over 40 years, contributing as a player, coach, an official, and an advocate for the game. Her basketball journey began in Brandon, where she played for Earl Oxford Junior High, and then went on to play for the Crocus Plainsmen. She also played for the Manitoba Provincial Team for 3 years, earning a silver medal at the 1985 Canada Games. She then went on to play at Brandon University for the Bobcats for 5 seasons. During her time there, she was named Brandon University's Female Athlete of the Year in 1984-85. After playing, she transitioned to coaching, first at Garden Valley and Winkler, and then going on to build a powerhouse program at R.D. Parker Collegiate in Thompson, leading the Varsity Girls to 4 consecutive 3A provincial finals, including back-to-back championships in 2015 and 2016. Her impact in northern Manitoba extends beyond the court as she's organized clinics, camps, and leagues to grow the game at the grassroots level. She's also served as an assistant coach for Manitoba's under-17 female team. She's worked with Basketball Manitoba's targeted athlete program and continues to be an advocate for rural basketball initiatives and increasing women in coaching through her role as the president of Basketball Manitoba. She's received the Mike Spack Lifetime Achievement Award and has been inducted into the Brandon University Dick and Verda McDonald Sports Wall of Fame. Sara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Darcy. Great to be here.
So I'm reading all this off here, and the list goes on and on. And before we went live, I said to you, wow, you have quite the resume. And you being the modest person that you are, you said, I've been around for a long time. But I said, no, yes, I said yes, but it's the quality of the things that you're doing and the impact you've had that's been so great to see when you read that. So I'm super excited just to go in and dig a little deeper and hear more about your story on a personal level.
Okay, great. Let's shoot.
So I actually want to start out before we even dig into the past there. You are the current president of Basketball Manitoba. So you're the second, I believe the second president. I want to say that someone else that I interviewed was probably the president at some time, but I know Ross and then obviously yourself. Mm-hmm. How has that been for you? I know you're talking offline. It's been about 1.5 years. What's that been like being at the head of Basketball Manitoba? Give us the inside scoop.
It's been very enlightening. It's been a big learning experience. I come from a different perspective because I didn't grow up in the city. I didn't grow up in the city, and I taught and coached in rural areas. I also wasn't involved a lot with community club and things like that. So I spent especially last 1.5 years as president, just taking a deep dive and really trying to learn more about basketball from a different perspective. It's been very enlightening. It's made me really excited and passionate even more just to see that I can be an influencer, help sort of from a different perspective than coaching kids and programs. And it's exciting. It's exciting. I have a lot of ideas and thoughts and places I want to take our board and our organization, and I think things will roll. We're starting to do things, especially coming out of the pandemic. We've got a lot to do, a lot on our plate, and we need to get rolling. And I hope I can be instrumental in doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to get more into your story, but in the introduction, I mentioned, and you mentioned it just now, you're not from the city. And I've heard people in the past joke about, no shout out. This is not a bashing or anything, but this is what people have said. It's, basketball Winnipeg, and, it's most of the stuff happens in Winnipeg. And then again, that's just more of a nature of the fact that most of the people in Manitoba live in Winnipeg more than anything. But you're going to be able to bring your unique lens to help Basketball Manitoba and the board be more effective and more efficient in some of those rural communities. And so I think that's, obviously it's really cool to have somebody who has that unique perspective that can say, hey, this is what it's like for those people out there. right? And so was there any was that part of the reason why you wanted to like step into this role, or are those some of the things when you're thinking of initiatives that you're hoping to maybe influence the board, maybe is the right word to use? I don't know. Am I saying crazy things right now?
No, no, I don't, when I stepped into the board, I don't know if I really thought of it that way. I was a little bit reluctant because I mean, most people who've done a lot of coaching and you you don't want to remove yourself from that and because you're
Mm,
so passionate about it and you don't really always feel you can do something more other than that for the sport. And I've always been a rural advocate because I've always lived in the rural area. And even from the very beginning, like being in Brandon, uh, I have stories about like not being invited for out of grade, in my grade 12 year for a provincial team tryout. Like it was just handpicked, like
mm,
way back, right? And not having that opportunity and things like that. Uh, and then teaching in Winkler and in Thompson, or teaching and coaching, just not having the opportunities and not it's not the fault necessarily of sort of an organization like Basketball Manitoba. It's your situation. It's sometimes there's it is what it is. And I mean that's one thing I've learned out being more immersed in the city and what goes on in the city as far as basketball and realizing, yeah, this is really hard
mhm,
to include rural and to advocate for rural from this position.
mhm.
It
Yeah,
takes some work from those areas. We need champions in those areas as well. And so by coming into this position, people in the rural areas can see like, yeah, like I was able to do it, and champion these programs in my areas. You can do it too. They need, and I think that's maybe something that I can bring to the table. And
mhm,
yeah, exactly, just having a different perspective, not just for the people in the city to see, but for the people in the rural to see as well.
mm, mhm. Yeah, so you're big on, having those champions in the area to step up and say, hey, like if
Yeah,
there's going to be
that's
change, it has to happen. That's a start here at least.
yeah, it has to start in your community. You know, I'd like to see Basketball Manitoba be able to help with that more, or
Mm,
sort of help those champions. But we need the champions to step forward first, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and and that, so they need to see that. They need to have encouragement and
For
opportunity.
sure.
So
For sure. No, I love that. I love that. So, I mean, you mentioned, a few little things that I want to talk more about. This provincial team thing, and obviously growing up in Brandon and where you've lived and coached, worked. But I want to take you even further back than that, and I just want to ask you straight up, like, what are some of your first memories of basketball? Who introduced you to the game? How'd you get playing?
you know, um, I grew up with an Irish father, of course, so basketball wasn't even on my radar growing up. My dad had nothing to do with my basketball, but my dad was a passionate sports person. He, I don't know, he in university and stuff, he boxed and he rode and he was on a championship rowing team and things like that. So, and my mom was a farm girl. She wasn't really had the opportunity growing up to do a lot of sports, just the school sports. So it never came to me naturally at a really young age. I didn't know, we didn't go out and shoot hoops with my father or anything like that. But my first introduction to basketball really was junior high, seventh
Mm,
grade. Uh, I remember because I had an opportunity to try out for a team. We had a school team, and my coach was Don Clemick, and he's passed away now, but he was really influential. He was also I believe, my social studies teacher and science teacher, I think, as well. And I saw him in the community. I saw him at my church and my school, and he stepped up to be our basketball coach. And he actually knew a little bit about basketball. Back in the day, it didn't come easy to find someone who knew a lot about basketball. So yeah, and I had a really good first experience, and I was always a pretty decent athlete, like in elementary school, and like stood out, won all the little ribbons in the track meets and things like that. And my older brother was a track star, so he actually ran on a track scholarship in Northern Arizona University later, and so athletics came naturally to our family, and so I was successful at it. So kids, when you're successful at something, you can do something as well, and then you like it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first experience in junior high. Yeah, and then went on to high school, Crocus Plains, and made the varsity team in grade 10, like right away. So I didn't even play junior varsity, and we had a really small team, but not in size, but in, well, numbers. And the program was struggling. It was one of those things, a big school just didn't have the program built, but we did all right. And in grade 10, we went to the Final Four.
Oh, wow.
Which,
Okay.
like, came in Winnipeg, and I had no idea what this was about. Like, we didn't know. We came in and we played a semifinal. I can't remember who it was. I just remember walking into Daniel Mack's school where we played it and being amazed mostly because of the people of color and the diversity in the school, which I was totally oblivious to. I didn't see that in Brandon.
For sure,
It was just a whole incredible experience. And note, I remember nothing about the basketball. It was the experience, right? So that was, and we did, and then the next few years we played high school, and I was successful as an athlete. Our team wasn't as successful, but we did all right. And some, we didn't do a lot of traveling or anything at that time, and played sort of minimal games. Vincent Massey Brandon was our big competition.
Yeah.
And went to high school. Then Bill Moody took me for lunch one day and said, "How'd you like to play university basketball?" Which wasn't even on my radar at the beginning of high school.
Really?
Well, I didn't know that was the next. I thought it would be fun to play, and I did start watching. University basketball in junior high. That was only because I think one of the significant points to get me really passionate about basketball was the 1978 Canada Games. I remember volunteering and being really disappointed because they put me in gymnastics. But then I got really excited because gymnastics was the first week, and the second week was basketball. And as a volunteer, I got to go in free and watch all the basketball games after I had done my duties the first week on gymnastics. And that was the first introduction to like higher level basketball, and I just loved it. I remember just being fascinated by Quebec doing all these fancy layups, like underhand scoop layups in their arm up, everybody, and just different little things that I'd never seen before. And then, so those are some of my influences into being passionate about basketball.
So those Canada Games, were they in Winnipeg?
They were in Brandon.
They were in Brandon. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, so you're just local.
Yeah, the legacy is that the Sportsplex up on the North Hill there, they built that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
that could have been winter games, but yeah, they were summer games.
Yeah.
You're
like, this is a long time ago.
Yeah, because they used to do basketball maybe in winter. I don't know. I can't.
Okay.
So.
Well, you mentioned obviously going on to play at Brandon, but before that, during your high school years, you're like, oh, we were okay, but you played on the provincial team.
Well, I didn't play. Yeah, I didn't play.
Or these later? Is this when you were in university? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because back then it was different, right?
It was. They didn't have grassroots. They basically usually when you were in end of high grade 12 or into first year university, the provincial teams had usually first year university, even second year university on them sometimes. so that was back in the early 80s, right? They changed it pretty quickly after that. I don't
Yeah.
think so. The year I was really when I kind of knew anything about the provincial team was when I graduated from the year I graduated from grade 12. I find out one of my good friends from Vincent Massey made the provincial team. And I'm going, how did you do that? Like, because I was very competitive with her and we were different players, but sort of I considered myself on her level. I was like the strongest player on my team and she was the strongest player on her team. And I thought I was just in a way, like I said, we weren't comparable, but I thought I was just as good as her in a way, in a different way. And I thought, how come I didn't hear about the provincial team in the ways? But it was honestly handpicked that year just because there was no rules. And shout out to Vic Pruden. He was the one who picked it, but I think you know, I've never met Vic Pruden, but in the day that was just what you do. He was the man who was coaching, and he got to pick his team, and he didn't want to have a tryout or something, or maybe there was a tryout and I missed it. I don't know, and I wasn't invited. So I was really hurt, and I thought, well, I'm going to make this team next year. So, and the next year they did have an official tryout. I think maybe a lot of people complained about the year before.
Probably, yeah.
And I made the team, and I made on those teams were like Carol Plain, who was a Carol Plain, Angela Foster, Deb Belinsky, Ron Besby from Swan River won one of those years. The Adams twins, like Heather and Arlene Adams, Jenny Finch, who they just inducted into the Hall of Fame. She was on that team. So there was a lot of people that I met that were really sensational basketball players, and that you find them in all these Hall of Fames and things. But it was good times. But so I played right after high school in that summer, and then the other 2 years. So I played right to my second year of university.
Oh wow, yeah. So you got to play 3 years because it was under 19 then, I think?
Under 21.
Under 21. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was under 21. Then they got smart in realizing that they should really develop players at a grassroots level, a little younger. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, but you in 1985 though, you guys won a silver medal. Was that the year you graduated, or was that one of the later
No, that
years?
was my second year university. That was last year. So I graduated in 82. So then I played 3 years, and then summer of 85 was the Canada Games in New Brunswick.
Okay.
We got to go up there, and
What do you remember about that? Like, do you remember who you played? Like, that's a Canada Games is, I've been fortunate enough to go, and it's if it's done right, it's a pretty cool event, multi-sport, and like I was blown away when I was there. What was your experience like? And obviously, winning a
it
silver.
was amazing. Like, yeah, it was for a young person. Like, you go in and like it's like the Olympics deal, opening or closing ceremonies, whichever week you were in. I think we were in the closing ceremonies because we were the second week. So I didn't experience the opening ceremonies, but I also remember a friend of mine from university, Lori Wilson, a great player at BU. She was playing for Nova Scotia at the time, so it was kind of cool because we saw each other.
Yeah.
I don't think we played against each other. We did end up playing. We lost to Ontario in the final. Very close game. I think we only lost by a couple points, 2 or 3 or 1 or something like that. So it was we had a very competitive team that year, and but I have no idea. I don't remember any of the other games. I don't remember that you're a little bit of a dark horse going in.
Yeah.
I remember being injured. I was injured through that whole fiasco.
Okay.
Like I had a stress fracture on my shin, my tibia, and they didn't really know it back then. And so I was like constantly on ice and ultrasound in between every game. So it didn't really affect my playing that much, but it did interfere with my third year. I had to sit out until after Christmas when I got back.
Oh wow.
Third year. So, but that experience was great. And the travel. Imagine from rural Manitoba and get to go all the way to New Brunswick for,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, and just making good friends. I made a lot of like just solo women I played with and just got to know them, and that expanded my basketball world immensely too. And
Mm.
as I was coaching later on in life, I kept running into people that are also coaching, and it was just it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
great experience.
For sure, for sure. I think it's interesting. A thing that's coming to my mind right now is the unique opportunity, everything you've explained about your experience so far being a rural person is you come in, you come to Daniel Mac for the first time, whoa, this is a lot. And then you get these opportunities with the provincial team, you travel there, and then you're playing at Brandon, you're obviously traveling there. How much these basketball opportunities can really open up someone's life. If you're from a rural community and you never play any sports or you don't play basketball, maybe you don't get to have these types of experiences.
Yeah, I think back to I don't know, I want to I don't want to brag about this, but I think I was actually being a rural person and having experienced that pushing through some of these boundaries. I actually encouraged and helped Vicky Neufeld. I don't know if you know that name. Vicky
No.
Neufeld was a star player for U of M. She played for Collegiate Frame, and she played in Winkler, and she was a grade 9 kid when I was in Winkler my first couple years, my first year coaching, and I took her. I had a battle with Basketball Manitoba on the phone because they wanted to do a tryout in. They were doing provincial team tryouts in the city, and I called them and I said, "Why should all these rural people like you should have? Why don't you have a couple tryouts in areas so we don't have?" And we weren't even that far from the city at that time.
Yeah.
What, an hour and 15 minutes or something, whatever it is, and they so because I wanted to get some Winkler kids into the provincial tryout. And Vicky was definitely a gifted athlete, and she was just like a Bambi, like she was so young, but she was eating basketball up, and she was very good at it. Um, that was the same year Pam Dennis
Mm.
or Pam Flick was in grade 9 as well. So I drove Vicky myself to the tryout, and there was Pam, and they're playing on the same court and battling it out, and Pam was from Brandon. So all these real athletes were coming in and trying to make this provincial team, but they needed people to help them, right? To bring them in, or they would have never. Vicky probably would have never even really known about the provincial team. And I remember being on the phone saying, "You need to have a rural tryout somewhere, like not just in Winnipeg, like a couple ID camps," I said, "and then let these players come in." And they called me back a day later and said, "Okay, we made a rural tryout in Brandon." And I said, "Brandon's like 2.5 hours away from me."
Yeah.
Oh, I just kind of laughed, but I was glad. I mean, they did make the tryout in Brandon, so they made another area. But those are the things that happen constantly in the early. And Adam, that was before your time, if you're listening to this. So yeah, but I see that those things are difficult from the city perspective. It's hard. It's hard. County and being now basketball Manitoba president. I mean, it's really difficult to be everything to everybody and serve the whole community. But you have to keep doing it. You have to keep doing it.
Yeah. You do your best for sure. So you mentioned a few people, your coach at Brandon, obviously your coach who introduced you to the game. Were there any other, mentors that influenced you as a player, or even you can even talk about transitioning out of playing into coaching, but just people who were influential in your basketball experience, that really taught you some lessons that even to this day you still carry with you?
I think I learned something from every coach. I mean, you're just a developing player, a developing human being, and I just was always a person that sort of ate up things. I'm a very detailed person. I like detail. I like coaching. That's the way I sort of coached too for the longest time. It's just footwork's really important. Learning to play the game versus following X's and O's. And I think I learned something from every coach because I had so much to learn. Um, one of the, you remember your first coach, like I mentioned Don Clement. I remember like I probably learned a ton from Bill Moody when he coached me in first year university because I had so much to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just soaked it up. And but probably the coach that really resonates with me the most, where I think that the way the things I learned from him, strangely enough, were the things that maybe made me confident to be a coach and want to be a coach was Norm Vickery.
Mm.
And Norm Vickery's an elusive name in Manitoba. Well, a lot of people who know him, I don't know if you know who he is, but he came to Brandon after Brandon had some troubles and coaches resigned and I was in my third year. And our program was slumping. Because we didn't have a coach, we didn't have recruiting being done, and Norm Vickery stepped in, and he had actually, as far as I know, won 8 national championships, 5 with Laurentian and 3 with UBC, I think. And he was quite well known at the time, like a basketball icon, but a very different individual, like very, very different in the way he approached the game, the way he dealt with people. Um, and people found him really kind of strange. And he only stayed for the year, but I just can't believe how much I learned
Mm.
about basketball. Maybe not necessarily about the coaching tactics. He was old school as far as like making us run when we were for punishments or whatever. But just I don't know what it was about how he approached the game mentally that really made me draw attention to lots of things like details and things about coaching, about
Mm.
footwork, about I don't know. I really don't know what it was, but I just always maybe it was just because he was so different. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that he really influenced, or that was a turning point where I knew that I'm just going to keep going on in basketball. And it's going to be in coaching. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back, I think that was it.
Yeah.
Because he made basketball really super special, like super intellectual and super special. And
Mm.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
say Norm Vickery was a big influence.
Mm.
Um, I was lucky enough to have influence from all kinds of people. Like my first high school coach was Dwayne Carsquire. He was a carpentry teacher, but he knew a little bit about basketball, and he made the effort to coach. And then Bob Hamilton was the high school coach I had. Dwight Kearns was my high school phys ed teacher at that time, and he's a big basketball person, big influence all the way around. I went to school with people like Don Thompson.
Mm.
He was in school with me. We were friends. We were out there in the 10th grade or whatever, playing hoops on the asphalt in the street lights, mini hoops and stuff like that. Like all these people who were great coaches, good people. I've really been lucky to touch base with them somewhere along my life, and
Mm.
it's been amazing. The
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
problem with that, if you noticed, and I'm going to bring it up, what do you notice about all those people I mentioned?
I don't know. You tell me.
They're all male.
Yes,
Right?
this is true.
So that's what I was lacking. I was lacking a female role model,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in coaching. And so that is one of my missions. I
Yeah.
really want to encourage young women to coach. Um,
Yeah.
and so the day Colleen Dufresne walked into my gym at VU, I think it was my first year, and we were hosting a pre-season tournament and around Halloween or something like that. And I heard about this woman taking over U of M team and coming, and she played on the national team. when she walked through that doorway, I can almost see it. It was like this big halo or light around her. When we were warming up, and I
Yeah.
looked over, and her team had just come in from the road or whatever, and I see her in this doorway, and I thought, oh, that's her. Like, I remember that.
Yeah.
Call me, I remember you if you're listening to this. And that was a big influence for me because everybody was talking about this woman who was a really good basketball player and coach. And she came all the way from New Brunswick to coach at U of M. And yeah, and that was a big influence to me. Like,
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
because if she can do it, I can do it. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, that's when you think about it, that's a little bit sad that I've had all this basketball experience and never had one that where there was a female. To be fair, my third year I did have a female coach, Faith Rossman. But those were troubled times too. We were
Mhm.
coaching, we were losing. So in my head, that didn't really have a great influence on me. Right?
Mm,
A
mhm.
woman stuck into a position that was really tough to come
Yeah.
and stuff or starting. I mean, she did well. I mean, but the time I ran out of time, my basketball time ran out
Yeah, for
as
sure.
as as the program continued to come back, right?
For
So
sure.
anyway,
Yeah, well, the things that stand out to me is like, your time at Brandon, you ended up winning Athlete of the Year, right? And so you talked a little bit about seeing Colleen there, and then like your coach being like kind of in retrospect, like these were big moments where you were shown a different part of the game, and you were kind of in your mind at least solidifying the fact that you want to continue on.
yeah.
And so you obviously do go on to coach. You mentioned Winkler was your first stop, but like, what was your first coaching opportunity? Why did you decide to do it? Or is it one of those things where you just said, hey, like I'm coaching, I'm teaching, so I'm going to coach? Like talk about the transition from player to coach.
Well, of course, back in the day, I don't know if they still do it. Well, they still do it now. You're going into phys ed,
Yeah.
and in your interview, they're wanting to know what can you do, right?
Yeah.
Extracurricular, that's a big thing. And I was more than willing to coach. I dabbled a little bit with coaching in, as a university student, as a volunteer. You help out in camps,
Hmm.
I did a junior high stint at Earl, Oxford with Bob Neville. He's another one that's a big referee in the province and through Brandon. He was the junior high teacher and phys ed teacher at Earl, Oxford, junior high across the street from the university. And so my friend and I went over and we coached their junior high team. That was my first experience. But then going to Winkler, I got the teaching job and basically said I would do anything, like everything. I
Yeah,
love
whatever you want, whatever you
yeah,
want.
yeah.
Yeah.
But of course, I really was excited to coach basketball. I didn't get to do the head coach job because there was another fellow named Dave Boyce who I learned a ton from as well. We kind of co-coached. There was a lot of things about the game I knew, um, a little more experience in the playing side than him, but he had a lot of experience. Um, he had done some playing, I think, in college, in a small college or something. But he had a passion for basketball, and he was a really good coach. He's a really good, just so calm and so
Mm,
you know. Uh, there was lots of things I learned from Dave as well, and we coached together for those 3 years. And I coached like junior, right, or junior varsity
mhm.
volleyball. Coached a ton of track. I really got yeah, they really wanted me to, they said in the interview, like, we have a huge track
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
and I dove in, and learned a ton from Dan Giesbricht and John Clausen. John Clausen was just inducted into
Hmm.
Manitoba Hall of Fame a few years ago, and John is a person a lot of people in our Winnipeg area and stuff that they didn't know, and that's why
Mm,
the Hall of Fame thing is great because I was so excited. John was an amazing coach and an amazing person. And I had the opportunity again as a young teacher to be around these people that were just good at coaching.
mm,
And
mhm,
I learned a lot from them.
mhm.
So yeah, so that's where Winkler, I coached there for a few years. we had a strong program, we had strong athletes, we had excitement around the game, and we did all right. We didn't win a provincial championship or anything, but we were always there. Oh,
Mhm.
my Winkler days was when there was another woman that I felt connected to because we didn't run into a lot of female coaches, and that was Debbie May,
Mm.
the coach at St. Mary's
Yeah,
for
yeah.
years and years. And Deb and I, like, we had this thing whenever we saw each other because they were 3A.
Yeah.
They were rural. They played in the rural areas a lot of times because until Basketball Manitoba or until high school figured out that they were on all girls team, so the numbers should have made them
Yeah, yeah.
even when I
Yeah,
went up to
yeah.
4A. So
Yeah.
for the longest time they were 3A. So I met Deb a lot, even when I went up to Thompson. So she in a way was an influencer, and she influenced me as well because again,
Mhm.
there's that bond where you're in a world of men, and um, and you're coaching and you're just trying to be a good coach, and uh, and she was a good coach, a really good coach, and teams were very successful, and yeah, so
Yeah.
those
So
were
then,
some of the influences along the way.
how did you, because you were only in Winkler for a few years, what brought you all the way up to Thompson to already
Oh,
partner?
I married a miner, a hard rock miner. That's right. Yeah, yeah. My fiance at the time was was ended up he was a geology student at Brown University, and he ended up going back
Ah,
into mining. He started mining. So
so then,
that's what happened. That was got me up there. But I would embrace it. I went up there not thinking, oh, poor me, I have to go up north. When I went into teaching, I wasn't scared to go out of Brandon, to go not to work in the city. My ambition was not to try to get to the city, and I don't know. I just was always very open to a
mhm,
little adventure.
yeah.
That was definitely that was definitely an adventure.
I was gonna say you got an adventure.
I wouldn't trade it for the world, you know. I had
Yeah.
a great start in Winkler. It was a great place to teach. No, like, the students were wonderful. Like, he didn't have very many discipline problems back in the day, and uh, I was yeah, and it was interesting, culturally very different for me, being
Mhm.
in Winkler. And then I go up to Thompson, and it's like, you're 800 kilometers north and one highway, and yeah,
Yeah.
and and you don't have your family close by, and everybody's
Mm,
like that. So the community is really close communities. Like, it was big enough to have what you needed,
yeah.
small enough to still be kind of a tight knit community.
Mhm, mhm.
And when you needed a hand, you'd always have friends around, right? Raising my children, the neighbor
Mhm.
would come over when my baby was crying because my mom was really far away, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of good things about Thompson and the situation. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I loved it.
I'm
26
sure.
I was up there, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so in the intro I said, obviously you had some success basketball wise, obviously, on the court at least with, the results. Some would say there is a stretch there where you're, a powerhouse, obviously back-to-back championships.
Mhm.
But what was your approach to building a successful program? Being that again, it's a different setup. It's a northern community. Again, I'm sure there's
Mhm.
different challenges with like how many people are playing, the grassroots. We talked about you being involved in there. So what were some of the things that you felt were successful in you helping to build the program at RD Parker?
I think the biggest thing is you have to. When I walked in there, the program, they had a basketball team, but that was a school of 1,200 students, and they had 8 kids on their basketball team.
Oh
And
wow.
and that had been sort of the history. They just couldn't get kids interested in basketball. It 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 wasn't. I mean, and you should be able to get us not a reasonable amount of kids
Yeah.
interested in basketball and I said, like, something's wrong here. Like, and that, so the coach that was there, she was there for a few years, and she was actually leaving. I took her teaching. Well, no, she left. Um, no, the first year I coached junior varsity, and I had a great little junior varsity team, and I wasn't even teaching at the high school. I just, like, I got married and off I went. I didn't have a job yet. There wasn't, but in Thompson, I was just told you get a job. Like,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
the turnover, the year I got my job was about 25
Oh
teachers,
wow.
20 teachers. The
Yeah,
turnover was quite high, um, because it was the north and people were taking jobs that they could, and then when they found a better, better location, a better location,
yeah,
they went on. And then we had a lot of teachers from Newfoundland, from Quebec, because of the immersion program and things like that. So it wasn't their home, and they just used it as a stepping stone. So yeah. So well, I lost my thought. What was I doing?
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, it was just the approach. You were saying there's only 8 kids there, and my question was,
Yeah,
what was your approach to
yeah.
building the
So the
program?
kids, yeah. I just did what I did. I just tried to help kids love basketball. I had tryouts. The second year I was the varsity coach. Um, I just would have tryouts, and only have 20 kids try out. And eventually we got to a point where it was a lot more kids trying out. But you just bring your knowledge and of the game and your love for the game, your passion for the game, and kids start to feel it. They start to catch on and start to realize you know what you're talking about. And then you grab a little bit of success. The first year I coached varsity, I took some so the schools, the grade nines, I coached a bunch of them in grade eight in one of the schools.
Yes.
So I was doing junior varsity in Artie Parker, and then I was doing the elementary school that I was teaching at as well. And two of those players, or was it three? Two of them for sure came up to the high school next, and I put them on the varsity team.
Wow.
And I had 4 grade nines on the varsity team
Oh wow.
get go, and that was sort of my thing. Because we really didn't have a lot in our programs. Like, even the varsity program, we went to a few tournaments in the north, maybe got to go to one in the south, and I don't even know if they did that before I came. And then we didn't play a league because we're too far from everybody. So these are the challenges, right? Like, you're 4 hours away from your closest competition. You can't play a league. So
Yeah.
we played tournaments. So I think the first year I coached, I think we had 12 games, and then
Wow.
maybe 12. Like, seriously. So that would have been 3 tournaments or something, or 4 tournaments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the first year I coached, we hosted 3A provincials because we had a very enthusiastic male coach that wanted to do this. And I walk in and go, "Oh, is this what we're doing? I have no team. I've built no program, and we're hosting." Of course, we didn't win, but that got excitement going. Our kids played tough, and it was exciting. And that just built the program even more. More kids came the next year. So it was a good call on that former coach to get the provincials. His name was Mark Tessier, by the way, and he was a great sidekick. Walking into a program, and he was doing the boys program, I was doing the girls program. So he was good. I mean, those kind of, all these things kind of happened to grow the game in Thompson.
Yeah.
It's just the timing, right? So yeah, so that's how we kind of got going. And I think it's just, once you get a solid program going, kids start to feed into it, and then you start having more success, and then it just kind of survives that way, right? You
Yeah.
have the base. And I think it really helped too that I started with some teaching experience. I have 3 years of teaching experience already and some coaching experience already. And then to go into this situation, I came from a really solid sports program in Winkler and learned a lot, and brought it into Artie Parker, and started taking advantage of the resources and things we had there. Um, which was very good, by the way, like the budget for travel and things like that. At that time, I mean, we traveled everywhere by Crocus bus.
Mm.
Started adding a few more trips and
Started to grow a little
started
bit.
adding a south schedule. And by the time I was 33 or 4 years into it, we were getting our 25 games and you know, thousands of kilometers. Like I traveled
Hmm.
thousands of kilometers a year.
Yeah,
Thousands.
I can only imagine. And
I
then, you
got,
know,
I got together, I was actually with a sidekick coach of mine, best coach assistant coach ever. Her name is Chris Victor. She's retired and lives in Winnipeg now. We got together to watch some of the Westman Classic last weekend. And I said, Chris, I have to do this podcast. What are some stories? He was with me for like, I don't know, 12 years or 14 years, 12 years, I think. We coached together, and she's the best sidekick ever. And she starts rattling off all these just these stories, right? And so, yeah, it's
are there any you're going to share, or is this just you're going to keep them in
oh
your bag? I mean, this is a greatest time as ever. Let's hear
well,
it. What do you
she
got?
said to me when I talk about the travel, that's what made me think of that.
Yeah.
Was one I think my second last year coaching or third last year coaching, like yeah, I would always try to for the longest time I would always try to add a game to a tournament weekend because all we played so I would
Mhm.
beg my school division and say, can we go Thursday night? Thursday. Can we leave Thursday
Yeah.
and then play a game somewhere Thursday night? And like in the early days when we took the bus, I would soak that. Like we would literally go, we'd leave at, 11 or we'd leave in the morning of Thursday, or sometimes we wouldn't be able to leave till noon because they say like, so we'd hop on
Yeah.
the bus and then we'd play like, I don't know, St. Laurent or something on the way down, or if we were going down Browning Way, we'd stop at Swan and we'd play Swan River, and then or if I'm going into the city, we'd play someone. I'd find a school that would let us play later that night or Friday at noon. I don't know how many games we went into a high school in the city when all the student bodies in there and we're come off the road and we're playing a short game at noon just to get a game. And then we'd
Mm.
go, then we'd start our tournament Friday afternoon. And people would say to me, why do you have them play all those games? Those games? Because, and the parents would say that too, like, won't they be kind of tired for the tournament? Isn't the tournament games boring? Well, no, it's just important we get games. And,
Mm.
you know, so we would make it into a 5-game weekend. The 5 games
Wow.
in less than 3 days.
Yeah.
And then we'd finish the tournament, the finals. And city people don't care what time the finals are, not knowing that we had to drive back. So we drove back through the night. We'd finish. Boys and girls would be on the bus. We'd have to wait. Sometimes we'd have 3 teams on a bus, a junior varsity team. And we'd have to wait till everybody's done. And we'd go find something to eat at 10 o'clock at night before we hit the road. We'd have to get out of the bus and walk through the drive-through to get McDonald's to get some food
Yeah,
because everything was closed.
Yeah.
And then we'd hit the road, and we'd get home at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And the kids would roll off the bus. Parents would pick them up at the McDonald's parking lot or something, or the mall parking lot in Thompson, and then we sleep all day the next day.
Yeah.
Kids would be mad at me for being away all weekend, and then we'd go to school the next day, and that's what we did.
Wow.
Just amazing experiences. Soak as many games as we could, and go deal with weather, deal with but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And
Yeah.
that makes team bonding, I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You know how many times I would do the dead fly outside the bus door because I came in late from the mall? Like we had rules like that, we were meeting on the bus at this time when we go into the mall and you come out. And now one time I was late because I got caught in a line trying to buy some sweatpants or something, and the kids wouldn't let me on the bus. It said, so I'm in the snow we do the dead bug.
Oh, you have to do that in the snow.
Yeah,
There's
you do
like
it in the
that's your
snow before
punishment.
you get on the bus because you were late. One time my girls did it in the middle of the St. Vital parking lot by the fireplace. They were
Wow.
late. So, and I didn't even say anything. The team says dead bug, and I got 3 girls down on the ground going dead bug.
Wow.
I mean, it was just fun,
Yeah.
doing push-ups on the side of the road in highway number 6 because you didn't have your seatbelt on. Turning around. That was when we had to drive vans. Like just those are the things you remember.
Yeah.
And changing tire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Second
So yeah.
last, second or third last provincial. Um, the day we started driving, one day I said the day we had to start driving vans was the day I would have to stop coaching, but it never happened. For the last 10 years of my
It
coaching,
was Vans.
we
You guys.
drove. So
Yeah.
that added another dimension because we'd have to stay Sunday night in a hotel.
Yeah.
Added more, a different kind of expense, a different challenge
Hmm.
for the athletes and the coaches because we couldn't drive back after a
Of
tournament.
course. Yeah. You got to like to. Yeah.
It's
You're
too long.
driving. It's one thing if you have a bus driver, but yeah.
So that was an adventure of itself. So what do? You get them up at 6 o'clock because if you don't, say we're hitting the road at 6 o'clock, and that's how you keep discipline, right? They're tired anyway, and they were good
Hmm.
kids. We had consequences if they misbehaved, right? So they serious consequences in the north if you misbehaved with your coach or there was any problems with anything like drinking or anything like that on the road. They miss an entire year in zone
Oh wow.
in through our whole zone. Yeah, they are disqualified from sport for a whole year. So it's a heavy consequence. So
Mm,
we rarely had problems, but
mm.
you get them up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you hit the Tim Hortons and off you go.
And just drive straight
So
back. Yeah.
you'd be home before dark,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You'd leave in the
Yeah.
dark, but yeah, just people cannot imagine the life. The one trip
Yeah.
was 2,400 kilometers. We went a couple of years ago. Five games, 4 days, including the driving, 2,400 kilometers. We went to
Wow.
Brandenburg, North Dakota, Winnipeg, and back.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's just like epic stuff. Like it's just
yeah,
that's yeah, it's crazy. Well,
crazy.
I
Uh,
want to ask you a little bit about I mean, again, you obviously have tons of memories, non-basketball memories, travel and all that. What about the championship teams that you like? Obviously, you had a little run there. What do you remember most about those years,
yeah,
that 2015, 2016 championship runs?
yeah. We were pretty strong through the whole. Like I think through my whole coaching, I only never went to provincials twice in the whole time in Thompson. And one was basketball. We had a basketball jamboree or something in Brandon where they had A to 4A, and we had to play a playoff against Swan River in Swan River Gym and lost by like 1 point or something like that. So we never went. And then another time we lost to Lynn Fawn, I think. Um, And then, yeah, so that was strong. There's quite a lot of Riley Parker girls we have several, have a million bronze medals. Like seriously, like always the bridesmaid, never the but yeah, we have quite a lot of bronze medals. But the 4 years where we had the run where we were in the championship for 4 years in a row, that was what happened there is I had actually 3 grade 9s that were on my team from the ninth grade and up. We had a strong program from we always, there had been a strong program for 20 years. But what happened, and I can credit a lot of young lady by the name of Kristen Donovan. She was very, very, very interested in coaching and a real advocate for basketball in Thompson. She started up with Pam Danis a bit of a Bison club program extension onto in Thompson. So she took young players, and I didn't have time to do that just with all the coaching and everything. So it was great that she was able to do that, and she had the interest to do that. So she started sort of a club program in Thompson, and she would take the kids down in the spring, and she ran it all year for different age groups. And so we actually, and I started doing a mini hoops program as well with young kids, and with junior highs, and so we started getting some actually really talented kids that were a little bit ahead than the norm in their basketball skills. And so that year I brought on 3 kids in grade 9, Adriana Prue and Caitlin Fennell and a young lady named Brianna Bugano. And they were sort of the staple of that program for the 4 years. We were playing provincial final when they were in grade 9, which I have no idea how we got into it. We had knocked off a contender, the first place Verdun, in a semifinal, and we ended up getting into the final against Linden Christian, and got waxed in the first half. I think we were 16 points down at half, and I was thinking we shouldn't have been there, but we ended up playing them pretty even for the rest of the game. So we never lost by any more than 16. But I had 3 grade 9s, and 2 of them were starting on that team. So
Wow.
so it was a pretty young team, and so they just kind of continued up, and so the next year we were contenders again. Well, we were now contenders because we got into the final the year before, and then we did meet Verdun, I believe, and we lost to Verdun, and they should have won. They were just a more seasoned team than us, and it was I think that was the way it went. And then the next year, actually, I wrote it down because I thought you would ask me that. Yeah, then we lost to Verdun, and then we played. Oh wait, yeah, we lost to Verdun, and then the next year we met Verdun again, and it was like this big defensive battle. It was in Sanford, and really low scoring game. Like I think it was like 39 to 42 or something. I don't know what it was, but we beat them. We ended up beating them finally. That was our 3rd year in the provincial final, and beat Verdun. And then the 4th year, we made the final again, and we beat University of Winnipeg Collegiate when Robin Belanger was playing. Robin was only in grade 11 at that time, I think. But we just about blew it. We had a double overtime in the semifinal, and we just about lost.
Oh, really?
We were expected to walk in, and it was I forget her name now. I should remember it, but a young lady from Faith Academy was just dominant. These little school, this Faith Academy had this player that we couldn't stop her, and we ended up tying, going into overtime, double overtime. Brianna Bugano nailed 2 free throws to get us into overtime at the end, or we wouldn't have even our provincial championship with them.
Oh, wow.
That was our second one, and our second chance. We won the 1 year before, and so it was like a bonus. I just said to the kids, bonus, if we get this is great, and I even thought that as a coach, because when we came back from the first time we won, the 3rd time we were in the provincial final and finally won it. I came back and I said to my friend Chris, my coach, Chris Victor, now what? Like, now
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We've had these gone through this journey with these girls. We hit the pinnacle. We won provincials. Now what? Right? So, and that was to me, I was already thinking about that as a challenge with the kids. What else can we learn? What else can we do? How can we get better? What can we get out of our next season? So I was already thinking about that when we came back from the other one, because I wanted these girls to have an experience and learn more and realize
Yeah.
just winning a provincial was not what it was all about, right? So
Yes.
um,
Yes.
my thing there, and you'd be interested in this, is my thing there was I got very, very interested in how much athletic development and physical conditioning could
Hmm.
contribute more to our play. And,
Hmm.
uh, and I did really, it was long before that had an interest in athletic development, but I really looked at ways to make them stronger athletes for the
Hmm.
next year, and make sure. I mean, if we couldn't get, if we weren't going to get much better or have opportunities to show progression or a higher level for basketball, at least we could be better athletes, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And see how much that contributed to our success.
Yeah.
Everything, like, just I had time with this group for 4 years to work on things like nutrition and energy balance and
Mm.
just how sleeping affects you, setting
Hmm.
goals. We had a
Hmm.
lot of time to do that with this group because I had them for so long,
Yeah.
and I had developed a program for so long. So this group really got the benefit of getting everything that I had learned over the years.
Hmm.
Things, coaches always want to make playbooks or goal setting and doing all those things, and you never
Yeah.
have time, especially when you're a teacher coach, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I was able to do those things for 10 years. Like I had a
Mm.
book that had, we did our team philosophy, we did goals, kids did individual goals, they wrote in them after every game. Those are the kind of things you dream of doing as a coach that I always wanted to do. But
Yeah.
I was able to do that with this group and it made a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Made a difference. So,
Yeah. That's special. The thing that stands out the most with all of this is the again, how important champions are, which has kind of been a theme of
yeah.
this entire, our entire time together.
Mhm.
But also what stands out is the rural areas, it's never a matter of it's way less about a numbers game than it is about like the quality, you
Mhm.
know? And so you
Yeah.
can always find talent and give quality experiences, even in a place like Thompson or wherever, Winkler, it doesn't really matter. Brandon, you
Yeah.
can always go smaller and bigger, but it really just comes down to the champion, right? The person who really wants to step into that role and be a person who's like, I'm gonna make this the best possible version of what I think it could be. And if you do that, you're going to see these things come to fruition
Yeah.
at whatever level. Obviously, there's certain talented players that come by your thing, but if you create the environment for them to thrive,
Mhm.
you're going to see these things take place, right? And so now, you've obviously moved on from like coaching at RD Parker. You're now in a board member role and now the president of Basketball Manitoba.
Mhm.
Um, I got to ask you, what excites you about the future of Basketball Manitoba? I know you have a few initiatives that we've discussed, increasing the number of women in coaching, for example. Um, so just give me a sense of, now putting on your Basketball Manitoba hat, what are you excited about for the future? And maybe talk about some of the initiatives that you're looking to kind of bring to the forefront.
Oh, I, what excites me about the future is that basketball is still growing
Mm,
and it's growing in different ways. Yeah, it's in all the years I've been involved in basketball, I've learned something new. Like I'm continuously learning, and things are. And people say, "Oh, basketball's changing." Uh, Change is growth. Change is growth.
mm,
Growth is change. No, it's not like it used to be the good old days, whatever. But there's a lot of good things that are happening. There's a lot of challenges. We don't know what it's going to look like. I mean,
mhm.
development and but one thing that I don't want to change is I don't want the community aspect to change. Um,
Yeah.
and that's still strong, but we just always have to keep our sights on. We can't lose that. We can't lose um, the communities where kids get their first taste of basketball, communities where they get their first support. Um,
Mm,
Basketball has to be accessible to everybody, and the best way to do that is through the schools and the communities.
mhm.
And I'm talking about community clubs, not elite. clubs, um, you know, and elite programs. We have to keep that accessible. I'm stealing this thought actually from one of our board members I just had a conversation with yesterday. And I asked him, what's important to him being on the board. And he said that. He said, we have to keep community accessible. A 9-year-old should be able to go in, or a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old should be able to go in and play basketball, even if he didn't start playing when he was 5. We have to keep that available and accessible to everybody. And that's super, super important. When people look at basketball, they often think of the highlights, like the seasons and the good university players and everything. But community is where it all started. Community is where we're going to get the coaching, get passion. Coaching, you don't have to be like an elite player or have played an elite player or even know necessarily all the names of the Sea Bears to be a coach. You just have to have a passion for the game, and you'll grow with the game and learn from the game. And I think I talk about coaching. We need more coaches. Yes, we do need more coaches at the elite level, but we need coaches in the community. We need people to champion programs. We need people just to have a passion, because that's where it all starts, right? That's kind of where I'm at with my board from this perspective of the board. Like, yeah, I want Basketball Manitoba to have great high performance programs and be successful, and we send some kids off to national team or whatever. That's an important aspect of sport in Manitoba. But I think I think one of my roles is not to make sure people don't lose sight of that grassroots, that community level, that accessibility, that introduction, and just make sure that it's always there for everybody to be, to access. And I think and I never thought about it in that way as much until I talked to this particular board member yesterday. And I think that's more important to me, I think, than a lot of initiatives. So again, you mentioned a few times coaching. We're in a point right now. Coaching, having enough coaches has always been a problem, but it's a beautiful thing seeing this growth in basketball in our province. But we are struggling to keep up with coaches and referees, and so we have a lot of work to do. We started. Our Mabo is working hard to mentor and get more refs. We're both working hard. Everybody's working hard to increase female refs, female coaches, female leadership is a big goal of mine, because frankly, we don't have enough. And also, if you really think about it and you do the math, if you increase female coaches and referees and leaders, then you're increasing your overall coaching pool. You have to look at it that way. So I'm not just I'm passionate because I really believe female players, young ladies, they can't be what they can't see. I really truly believe that. They don't see themselves as main coaches if they haven't seen any female leaders. And I think that's one of our biggest issues. We can do a ton of stuff and get a ton of girls playing basketball, but if we don't develop leaders out of that, then we're not going to get leadership growth. So, half the population is female, so you need to get leadership growth in both male and female. So I think that's a big goal, and all sports organizations are analyzing this pretty carefully. They've worked really hard at trying to get Basketball Manitoba works really hard at trying to have program equity, like making sure we have enough for males and females, and that we do the right things for females versus males, and not try to paint them with the same brush. But we aren't really getting the leaders of that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we have to really analyze what we're doing. Um, we have projects on the go right now looking at diversity, equity, inclusion, and just trying to weed out and find, try to put a lens on ourselves and see how we can do it better. And those are some of the areas we're working on. So that's, there's always something to do. I'm not going to
This
be,
is true.
I'm not going to say I'm going to do it all, and I'm not going to say that we're going to do it right, but we're
Mhm.
certainly going to, put our heads down and, and pick away at it and
Yeah.
see if we can make a great organization even better.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's very well said. I actually, just interviewed Martha Bradbury, and so on the official side, talking about more
Mhm.
female officials. So it's
Even tell you
being.
my official stories.
Yeah, I know we haven't even we haven't even talked about your life as an
So
official,
yeah,
but
we got lots of those. I can thank
yeah.
Winkler for that and Earl for that as well, right? Because
Yeah.
one thing that I know we're running out of time, but one thing I think that I credit for a lot of where I am now with basketball and what I've learned is just being in those areas where you had to do it yourself.
Hmm.
So I go up north, I have nobody around me that's really a basketball person. I'm it. You get put in a situation where you
Yeah.
are it. And if you don't do something, nobody else is going to do it. And, um, when I went to Winkler, there wasn't enough refs. So I would coach the girls' game, then ref the boys' game. Even when
Hmm.
we traveled to areas where we played, like I remember reffing in Morris all the time. Morris is an hour outside the city, but they
Yeah.
couldn't get enough refs. And so even when we traveled, I would put my referee jersey on to ref the boys. So I became a ref very quickly and learned very quickly how to ref.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you're up north, what are you doing? You're running
Yeah.
a tournament, you're coaching a tournament, then you're putting the ref jersey on, and then you're refing in between. So you were forced to do things, or it didn't happen. And
Hmm.
so I can credit that to, just being in the north was huge. It helps you, it makes you grow, it makes you grow.
Yeah.
So, which, if I wanted to learn something about basketball, I had to make sure I got down to a clinic. I had to drive 500 miles to do
Yeah.
it. And then I wasn't going to sit there and goof off. I wasn't going to go for lunch on a session
Yeah. You're
because
gonna.
that was
Yeah.
all I had, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's sort of the different way I think that made me really eat up learning it.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. It's like a perfect segue into my last question. And, you've already started to give some of the advice, or at least how you managed it. But now in retrospect, you've gone through it all. You've maybe, made the quote unquote mistakes, or you've learned the lessons, maybe is a better way to put it. But the question I have for you, and I always like to end because we are coming to an end here with some advice. And so if we think about looking at these, rural communities, less people or met less champions, less resources, whatever it is, like say you're now at a conference, a rural conference of coaches that you put together, and now you're sitting in front of them and you want to give them advice to be the best champion in their communities, just like you were. What advice would you want them to walk away with? What piece of information? Because they're not going to walk away with everything, but they're going to take that one thing or those two things. What would you want them to walk away from that talk with on how to be a better champion in their community?
Oh, hmm. uh, I guess you just have to be bold. You have, you know, I mean, I I think you can't be afraid to take risks, and you have to realize you're it. Um, if you're the one that has some knowledge, has the get go, you're it. You be bold, do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to start something up, and don't be afraid to fail a
Mm,
number of times. You know, uh, it takes a lot of perseverance. I I would also kind of look at it. the other way for people who are young people who are maybe, they grew up in the city and they had everything there, and have this illusions that, I'll put it this way, say they got a job and they're now in a rural area, and don't sit there and long to go wish you were in the city so that you could play ball, or you could coach, or your daughter can play ball, or whatever, right? Like, don't long to do that. Make it happen where you are. Because you have skills and you have knowledge that you got when you were playing in a playing or coaching or whatever in a program that was well established and successful. Let's bring it on in your own community. Don't wish you were back there. Wish to make it happen in your community. And I think that's huge. I have so many, when I was in Thompson, things happened when people came who had skills. So we had an amazing wrestling program at our school because a guy came from the city or from another area where he had wrestling and he brought it to the community. That's what you have to do. You can't sit there and whine about how poor your situation is and that you don't have, and that your kids aren't getting the best or whatever because they're in a rural area. You have to make it happen. And I think, we need to do that. I mean, we have so many young people that go into a community and they sit quietly because they're uncomfortable and they're not with their friends and they're not with their family where things were good and they could do whatever they wanted to do. Make it happen in your community. You be the champion of that. You start the program. You start teaching people things and you'll learn. You'll learn fast. So I guess that's what I would say in that situation. Because I mean everybody. I wanted. There's a shout out to a few people that I wouldn't mind saying.
Let's hear it.
Speaking of people in the north, you talked about influencers, but there's people that I hope that they listen to the podcast. They probably would at times. Like we had people in all areas, like John and Karen Clark in Flin Flon through the 90s. Big basketball people in Flin Flon. Bill McDonald, who they do a memorial tournament for in the Paw. He was coaching. Nelson Fulford. We even had people like Rick Scott, who's a big volleyball guy down here now. He's probably retired now. He was in Norway House, and the best basketball games we played against were when Rick Scott was coaching, and I think it was Rob Schroeffel. They were coaching in Norway House, and we had close games when I had a good, some of those champions. Danielle Daniels in the park, huge basketball person, just amazing, does great things with kids, and there's just so many people out there. Ron Vesty through the 90s who got, and Dwayne White in Swan River, like all these people, they did that. They brought their skills, the things they learned, to their communities, and the passion of the game. They taught kids, and and then I see Carrie Lezouk with NHSAA, and Brandon, and he was in Swan River. He was in Swan River from Dwayne White. So there, I would really encourage people, if you have the passion for basketball or skills, even if it's, it doesn't have to. You don't have to be an elite player. You didn't have to play university, but start a program. You don't even have to coach a program. Just get it started. Get recruit coaches. So So that would be, if we put the question in that way, that was you just have to change your mentality to be the champion and not wish for something to go back to, but something new.
Yeah. Well, I think like the quote would be make it happen where you are. That's the
Yep,
you can put
yep,
that in the banner, that could be this is going to be when you host these things that we just created right now, they're going to be these
yep,
rural champion development things by Basketball Manitoba. They'll say that the catchphrase will be make it happen where you are.
yeah, exactly. Make it happen. For
Yeah,
sure.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. No, it's been really nice to hear the story and talk about the journey. Again, we could have talked about if there's a whole bunch of things we
Oh, I
did not
know.
talk
Yeah.
about. Um, we could have went a whole bunch of different places, but really, again, it's really nice to have you on and just to see the journey that you've been through with basketball, and how again, I've spoken with other rural people, but not, you're from Brandon. I've spoken with plenty of people from Brandon,
Mhm.
but you have even a more unique experience, right? Taking it even to a smaller community and like having that and still being able to affect the game in such a positive way and be an influence and not just in the community, but even outside of it, right? Like, and so, like you said, making it happen where you are is
Yeah.
essentially, I mean, this is your motto as well. This is your
Mhm.
ethos, I guess, at this point, or it's what your lived experience. So again, like I really appreciate it. And the goal here, you talked about community quite a bit, is of the podcast is to connect people. And so the my hope is that there's a rural coach out there that's listening and has
Mhm.
received some bit of inspiration or a little bit of guidance from this conversation. And
Mhm.
then maybe they found out that, oh, hey, President Manitoba is a real person, maybe,
Yeah.
and this is like really empowers them. So I just thank you so much for taking the time, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Darcy. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series, and reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.